Hello, hello. This is Anna, Imagination with the Healing Garden, and welcome to Shifting Perspectives. This is not Shifting Perspectives. This is Philosophical Coffee. I'm getting a late start today. So, if you are new to my channel, I'm a scientist. I am a perspective scientist, and I am a cartographer of the internal expanse. Love to say those words. So, I wrote an article this morning. I usually do the morning show first, and then from the morning show, I then switch over and I write an article and I post that out. And I did it reverse this morning because my daughter was sleeping. And it's like, you were sleeping. And I love writing articles. I love writing because it just, well, because when you have emotions and ideas that come in, it collects and stores potential energy, and then it builds up just as potential energy does. And if you don't transfer it over into kinetic energy, it just sits there. And for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, and it really needs to be something positive and or not negative. So I love to use Van Gogh because he's an excellent example of this, where he had a lot of energy, a lot of negative energy, and it built up inside of him. And he literally transferred all of his negative potential energy, and he converted it over into his paintings, kinetic energy. And it's basically taking an emotional energy and putting it into action. And if we don't do that, then we explode and we become violent in some cases. We explode and we just become verbal. So that's why we have explosive bouts of screaming. Or we just completely implode. Really, it's implosion. And that's when we see people break down internally and in silence. The implosion, I haven't explored that yet, the science of implosion, the physics of implosion. And it's vital, it's extraordinary to start opening this door, because when I first started looking into it, it really, the similarities between physics and logic, physics and psychology was like undeniable. The more I delved into the physics and compared it to psychology and how emotions manage us, it was mind-blowing. And over the last 30 days, I've applied the laws of physics to my lifestyle. And I can say without a doubt that this is the most internal peace I have ever had. It is extraordinary. The primary thing is understanding the law of mirrors, the law of reflection and deflection, understanding battery, electrical energy, and how energy shifts, moves, and fluctuates, assuming that we are sentient batteries. And that is the assumption that I took going into this since December 1st. It was I'm going to treat myself like I'm a sentient battery. And I have a background in physics, so I was able to immediately plug all the knowledge into myself. And emotional management, using physics as emotional management, or I should say using physics for emotional management, was a game changer. It was extraordinary. It blows my mind how little we know about emotions. And that was, of all my psychology research, it was the one thing that really stood out to me the most, that human beings have had emotions since the dawn of time, and no one has figured out any consistency with them. And when I got into my psychological studies, when I went into therapy, and the psychologists were like, well, we'll try this. And it felt like a bunch of 5-year-olds trying to paint a Rembrandt. That is exactly what it felt like. And I'm going, we've had these emotions our entire human existence, and we have not yet figured out anything with them. So the common practice is suppress them, which clearly isn't working, because Exhibit A, look at the world. And I'm going, okay. And now there's this push since the 1980s, more so in the 1990s and 2000s. There's been this push of we need to allow our emotions, which has been met with a lot of resistance. We have to resist our emotions, says the resistor, and they're resisting this change. It's fast. Like I said, it fascinates me when you start looking at resistance and conductors, and the allowance of the flow of energy, emotional energy. It's been extraordinary. And cognitive dissonance is an emotion that, of all the emotions, it's the primary core of all emotions. It's the first emotion, and it is the one that is in the back of every single negative emotion, is cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance comes from harmonics, which is physics frequency in music, and it comes from harmonic dissonance. Harmonic dissonance, I remember this stage of my growth very well in music theory. Harmonic dissonance is when you have two frequencies, two chords on a scale that contradict each other, that are not compatible, harmonically compatible. And when you play them at the same time, like a second chord, a second is when you have two intervals in math and music. Music and math are the same thing, absolutely the same thing. When you have two notes that you play at the same time and they are too close together, you're going to have dissonance. So we call that harmonic dissonance, and it's that crushing, painful sound that we know when we hear the raw note. When you hear the raw note in a musical composition, that is harmonic dissonance. It's because that note comes from a different frequency. Well, specifically, it's a different frequency that does not align harmonically, mathematically, to the current key signature. And we work the exact same way, which leads me to say psychologically, oh, well, we must be on our own frequency, and other people might be on their frequency. And when you have two frequencies that come together, there's going to be dissonance. Now, logic is extraordinary, because this is where logic, inside my head, I have my own logic line, you have your logic line, and that logic line, it's as if it produces its own frequency, and I exist on the frequency of E major. Literally and metaphorically, whenever I hear anything in the key of E major, I just, oh, that buzzes my happy zone. And I was doing a lot of research back about 3 months ago with this, and it was aligning to, this is great, it was aligning to people's zodiac signs. There's a circle of fifths, and there's a zodiac sign and a clock. Boo, 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 boo. So zodiac sign, circle of fifths, and a clock. And if you overlap them, boom, 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 they match up. All three of them are on a rotation of 12. And if you move the zodiac, so the zodiac is not on Aries, but it is on Capricorn, and then you cycle down to the fifth, that's where I am, I'm a Taurus, and it also aligns with the circle of fifths, which is E major. This is just an hypothesis, and it's fascinating to me that I happen to be a Taurus, the fifth cycle on the zodiac, and I also happen to be, E major happens to be my favorite key signature. Now, there's also, that's the majors, and then there's the minors, which is the relative minors. So it could be either or. So I started comparing and asking people. I was doing a little bit of kind of like it was just fun. And I was asking people, what's your favorite zodiac? And musical students could only answer this question. Then I'd ask, what's your favorite key signature? And they aligned. Every single time they aligned. And it was extraordinary. So I have a working hypothesis that our key signature, that our frequency is aligned to whatever our zodiac sign is. Now, if you pull into astronomy, astrology, and you line it up, there's a lot more happening there mathematically and with physics. It's really cool. Anyway, so I hypothesize that things that are on the frequency or compatible with the frequency of the key signature of E major, that's my frequency. And all the things that I have collected around my home are reflective of that frequency, that harmonic. So that when something comes into my logical line that is incompatible, it creates something in psychology that we call cognitive dissonance. And there's a lot of mystery around cognitive dissonance. And the reason why there's so much mystery around it is because you cannot comprehend it until you get into physics. So this is where a lot of psychologists say, oh, there's no cure to cognitive dissonance. Well, you have to step over to physics now. This is where a lot of psychologists say, well, there's cognitive dissonance, and that's as far as they get. And then they just shut it down. They're like, to the point where they don't even talk about it. They just, well, there's cognitive dissonance, and then they're stuck. You have to now swing over to physics to finish, basically to finish the puzzle. Physics is where it continues. And this is what happened with my research is I was working in psychology, and I got to the end of psychology. I got to the end of philosophy, and I went, okay, now what? And I should say that that's when metaphysics really took off in philosophy. But for psychology, it was a dead end. This is literally the end of psychology is cognitive dissonance. And following cognitive dissonance linked me over to music, which linked me over into physics. Now, this is where it gets fun for me. I love this. This is where it gets it's juice for me. Pythagoras is the inventor of the circle of fifths. He is the inventor of music theory. And he is also the inventor of the word philosophy. He was a mathematician. Oh, and we also know him, of course, with Pythagoras' theorem. That's Pythagoras. So this is a man who knew music theory so well that he invented it. This is a man who knew physics so well that he invented music theory. And this is a man who knew philosophy so well that he is literally its name, or he's not the namesake, but he's the one who named the word philosophy, which when you take into account his background and relation to Egypt, the word is not Greek so much as it's Arabic, and it translates to the word wisdom love, not lover of wisdom, wisdom love, which is where I got the term from, is Pythagoras. So when I broke all this down and I discovered the relationship to cognitive dissonance and its relationship to frequencies, what I discovered was that dissonance is pretty much what causes us pain. We are frequency, we are energy, so says Tesla, so says Einstein. And when you take that into account, if we're energy, therefore, energy beings are very, very sensitive to dissonance, to non-harmonics, to frequencies that don't fit, and to the point where it causes us pain. Now, if you assume for a moment that we are a battery, and we are, but we're sentient, and this is my favorite thing in everything I do, is we can feel physics. We can feel it. That is what our intuition is when we can feel physics. So you'll be sitting down, you'll be whatever, but we have an internal clock. We know about the internal clock. We know about our circadic rhythm. We know about this. So if you look at our circadic rhythm, if you look at our internal clock, and if you also step over and look at the laws of physics, and you look at how physics and math are over here, the rhythm that we have is over here, our relationship to cognitive dissonance, the thing just kind of comes into this massive package that is the human being. And you start to realize how very much we can feel physics, we can feel math, we can feel logic. And we can feel this as early as, I'm hypothesizing, 2 years old. I believe that we can feel this as early as 2. And the reason why I say 2 is because that is really when our intuition kicks in and fear starts to go away and starts to get replaced with logic and problem solving. Ever see a 2-year-old trying to get to the cookie jar and they're sitting there creating this massive geometric ladder out of chairs so they can climb? Oh, that's problem solving at its best. That's not fear. In fact, there is no fear in a 2-year-old. We all know this. They are fearless because they are overwhelmed with logical deduction. Like, I love 2-year-olds. They're amazing people. And what I love most is my cats. So I'm going to like hop, skip, and a jump to an old story here. An old story. So when I was 12, give me a minute. I got to think about how to tell this non-gory version of my story. For reasons I'm not going to get into, I had over 60 cats by the time I was 12. We're not going to talk about the why. 60 cats. This allowed me a lot of research. And by the time I was 12, I had mapped out the entire genealogical line of 5 generations of cats. I was able to look at their physical attributes, their behavioral attributes, and unfortunately, I was able to identify the development of trauma over 5 generations and how that altered their behavior. I also had a feral cat who was the primary genetic core to this genetic line. And I was able to map out the feral cat and how many generations it took due to taming and human handling. The feral cat evolved, or the generations evolved into tamed cats. And what I noticed was, bottom line, these are my conclusions. The cat is equivalent to a 2-year-old. And the cat is also equivalent to the second ethical perspective. Identical. The second ethical perspective is 100% learning, curiosity, and educational development. They are fearless. Oh, are they curious? Did I mention they're curious? They get into everything, which also coincides with a 2-year-old. Now, from there, I have since 15 years old, and I've been able to take control over my own cats and exercise humane and responsible cat pet ownership. I was able to have now cats over a longevity that allowed me to monitor and watch, observe the cat behavior. And this is what I'm doing now with my cats. I've got two of them here, Midnight and Spriggan. They're siblings. And I am huge on adopting from humane societies and then nursing them from trauma, abuse, recovery on over to healthy mental health with cats. It's one of my hobbies, is the psychological development of cats. And these two particular cats, when I adopted them, they came to me starved due to just abandonment. They were feral. They were found without food source. And I'm watching now the trauma development with the cats, where they are still both, especially Midnight, exhibiting signs of starvation. They get plenty to eat to the point where Midnight is plump. However, he still gorges himself. And I noticed that he eats almost with a scarcity mindset, more so than his sister Spriggan. And it's extraordinary to watch their development. So it's really interesting to see how very much their scarcity mindset, their trauma with their early life and early development has gone on to affect their later life. And the curiosity, the playfulness. And one of my favorite things is when you're putting out the food, Spriggan will take a step back and she'll wait. And Midnight will be up on the counter, not on the counter, but he's like stretched up with his little hands and he's using his toe beans to grab at the food while we're dishing it out for him. And exactly like a 2-year-old waiting for food to be delivered, like a treat. It's extraordinary to watch his behavior. And he gets very, very mouthy, very, very mouthy when we put the food out. And I'm watching all of this. And there's so many similarities with the second ethical perspective, cats and 2-year-olds, very, very much so. And one thing over and over I will say again is there's no fear. That's really, really vital. There's no fear. And it blows my mind how much fear is almost phased out of our evolution by the time we are 2. It's literally completely non-existent. It is as if nature says, okay, fear is supposed to keep you alive from the first year and a half, but it's obsolete and we no longer need it after 2, which tells me that fear is a learned response. And I'm going, fascinating. Fear is learned. I can't get over this. Fear is learned. And if fear is learned, what then is supposed to take its place? And that's problem solving, which we see with the 2-year-old who loves to say, I want the cookies on top of the fridge. Here, I'm going to create this geometrical construct out of chairs to get to it. And succeed in most cases, they do, under the negligence and non-observation of a parent. So it's extraordinary to see. I remember my son, oh my God, my son, he was 4. I had a Christmas tree and there was a chair and he stood up on the top of the recliner and I was observing and I'm going, what is he going to do? What is he doing? And I'm watching him climb into the recliner and I'm going, okay. And then he climbs onto the back of the recliner and I'm watching and I'm assessing the danger. And I decided this was not dangerous and it wasn't. And then I watched him leap from the back of the recliner to the top of the Christmas tree. I don't know why. Fearless. And then I watched my son, the Christmas tree, just kind of do this. So it was me. It's like, oh, and I'm looking at this going, it's without a doubt, he's harmed. He was unharmed. There was no damage to my son. And I'm still, it still blows my mind that fearless, he would leap. And fear is learned. But I could see the problem solving. And we see this every time a cat goes to jump. We see the geometry. This is interesting. I love watching cats jump. I love watching YouTube videos where I'm watching the cat jump because there's a lot of math happening there. But cats don't know math. Cats don't know geometry. Cats don't know physics. Oh, but they're calculating. And I'm going, fascinating. Oh my goodness, how many times have we watched? There's this one video I saw where this man had a flat screen TV and the cat is just back and forth on the back of the couch. and there's a gap between the couch so that I don't know why they had this set up, but so they could sit and watch TV, and they had like this whole seated area, and they had the couch turned away from the TV so that there was a gap, like probably a 4-foot gap. And the cat is sitting there. There's like a helicopter that was flying all over Norway or whatever country it was. And the cat is just running back and forth, like assessing, okay, where can I jump? And that was actually the caption, as you can watch the cat calculating to make the right jump. And sure enough, there's this one moment where the helicopter flies, there's this ledge in the string, and the cat leaps right at that moment. There is a lot of math happening in the cat's brain. I'm going to remind you, the cat is only equivalent to a 2-year-old. And it's the same calculations I watched in my son when he was on the back of the couch or on the back of the recliner. And it was a lot, but the cat took a lot more time to make the calculation than my son did. My son was like instant, whereas the cat was like assessing. And I'm going, I know the cat has not studied geometry, physics, and math, but there it is making calculations. And I ask the question, how? And well, why? Why? So it can jump, but how? How is an animal that has not studied any mathematics calculating? Intuition, which really has me asking the question now, what is intuition? Now, going back to our circadian rhythm, that is 100% math. That is absolutely back to music. That's rhythm, hence the word rhythm. And rhythm is just frequency pattern, predictable frequency pattern. I'm going to really emphasize the predictable part. There is an Instagram account I follow on called Physics or Astronomy. I can't remember what it is, but I follow a lot of physics and astronomy on YouTube. And there's this one that's currently going around. I love it so much. And it's showing what we think our solar system looks like. And it's the sun and we all know this from the 80s. It's the 9 planets, 8 planets plus Pluto, all rotating like this around the sun. And then the account says, okay, now what our solar system is really doing. And what it shows is our sun star flying through space away from the Big Bang, while the planets are doing this gorgeous spiral thing around the sun, trying to keep up, when in fact it's being pulled by the sun, catapulting through space in this spiral, much like the Fibonacci. Is it Fibonacci? I have to make sure I'm saying that right. The Fibonacci square. And the Fibonacci sequence, exactly like the Fibonacci sequence. And I'm going, that's fascinating. So I'm watching this spirally thing just catapult its way through space in this gorgeous Fibonacci spiral as it moves. And I'm going, wow, there's the 12 ethical perspective stages of growth. There is spiral dynamics. There is the Fibonacci sequence. There is the circadian mathematical rhythm of frequency. It's all coming together and it's looking really cool as it keeps catapulting. So now I'm taking this clock and I'm looking at this predictable mathematical frequency, which is our circadian rhythm. And now I'm looking at our intuition, and I'm looking at the fact that this cat and my 4-year-old son can make calculations without learning any calculus. And yet cats are really precise on their jumping skills. And I'm going, hypothesis. Well, I should say at this point, conclusion. We know a lot more internal physics, logic, and mathematics than we realize. In fact, I am a solid believer that intuition is nothing but our internal physics, our internal math, and our internal logic. And it's not limited to human people. It's animal people. It's all of us. It's mammals. Now, I also hypothesize that this also goes to birds, which is why birds, if you look at birds, oh my God, birds know shit. Birds know when to go and where and for how long. Birds did not study math, and yet they know. Again, when you take into account all the math and all the logic and all the physics and how much it is part of our psychology, it adds up. Psychology, physics, math, logic are the same thing. But if you look in scholars, if you look at universities, if you look at how we treat psychology, psychology is the bastard child of our cousin that we don't want to acknowledge at the family reunion. And that is really for a long time now, that is the reputation that psychology has gotten. In fact, when you look up science in any encyclopedia, including Wikipedia, psychology is not counted among them. Furthermore, when you look at any historical reference, psychology is just not acknowledged. It's over there. Now, I will say this very, very bluntly, that psychology is very much reminiscent of a 5-year-old trying to paint Rembrandts, because it only came around in the 19th century, or so we think. It's actually a huge branch of philosophy, and it's well documented. If you study philosophy and you get into that strand, you can actually see more psychology. That's where they keep the good psychology. That's what I say, is that's where they keep the good psychology, is in philosophy. I have a psychologist friend right now, and she's started to study philosophy. And probably once or twice a week, she's like, I can understand now. Oh my God, like it's psychology, but it's good psychology. It's logical psychology. Whereas our traditional psychology is a bunch of 5-year-olds trying to paint Rembrandts. So I can understand why it has the reputation it has, why scientists are going, yeah, you're not allowed in here. But now I'm looking at philosophical psychology, and I'm looking at math, logic, physics. I'm looking at these cat studies that I'm doing, my children's studies, and just looking at the mass of how animals respond to this. And physics, math, and logic are internalized. I am a firm believer that these things have internalized in us by the time we are 2 years old. And it takes time, because we get here, and it takes time to learn the physics, math, and logic. But by the time we're 2, we got it down. And our intuition, when something doesn't feel good. And if I were to translate over into physics, well, that's because you're feeling the frequency and the vibrations of another person, and you can feel their surplus of negative emotional energy. That's really what it is. When you are around somebody who doesn't feel good, it's because you are mathematically picking up on their frequency. And because they have a surplus of negative or a surplus of positive energy, which they have stored up in potential energy, now you can read it, which means there's a lot more physics, math, and logic happening inside of us than we realize. Now, because psychologists are unaware of this, no one's looking into it. And because physicists don't study psychology, they don't think to connect the two. But over the last 30 days, I have changed my lifestyle literally to follow rigorously the laws of physics, math, and logic. And the cognitive dissonance, the internal peace, just aligned. And I went, wow, peace. And it's the first rule is you let the emotions flow. The emotions are, pretend you're a sentient battery. Allow the emotions to ebb and flow and move however they want. Now, they're going to build up. That's the potential energy building up. They have to be transferred over into kinetic energy. So that got me asking the question now, how do you transfer potential energy in a human being over to kinetic energy? Art. Compliments of Van Gogh, art. He is a phenomenal example of that. Vocal, which is why we feel so much better after we talk, is because we have released the potential energy. Fascinating. Just fascinating. Now, here's something else that I have yet to sit down and really hypothesize, which is something I really wanted to dig in deep today, is this is really fascinating. Let's say we have negative energy inside of us. Let's say that our husband did something we don't like. It made us upset. So now we have a surplus of negative energy. We had that stored up. We have suppressed it. Now we have resistance. Now we want to talk to the husband to communicate. I am not happy with what you have done. Now we want to change this potential energy into kinetic energy. We have to do it. If we don't, we'll explode. Internal implosions happen. So now I'm asking the question. We have the ability to choose if we are going to use this potential energy and transfer it into a positive or a negative. Those are our choices. And I did this yesterday when I was writing a letter to my partner. I had negative potential energy stored up. I needed to write the letter to transfer it over into kinetic energy. I did not want to hurt him. So I had to make the conscious choice of making sure that my stored negative potential energy would not convert over into kinetic negative energy. This is really, really important, is choosing to make sure this negative turns into a positive kinetic. Wow, this is like real deep conscious awareness on such a level. And we're not aware of it because we don't know to make the connection between physics and psychology. We don't. But now that I'm aware of it, and now that I've been practicing this for 30 days, now, I am consciously aware. Now, I also understand human transaction, the emotional transactions of human connection, which is exactly like hooking up two batteries. In fact, understanding economics, if you tie in physics with batteries, two batteries, specifically a light bulb, and you look at light bulbs, economics, psychology, you have the human connection of, you have the emotional transaction of human connection, which is similar and is 100% compatible with what the Gottman Institute teaches. Bids for connection. Gottman Institute, Gottman, you can Google it. Phenomenal, phenomenal resource if you want help with your relationships. The Gottman Institute, I can't remember his first name. Dr. Gottman is the one who made the connection of, okay, all relationships, true story, all relationships, good or bad, are contingent upon our bids for connection. Bids for connection is all of the little things, small and big, that we provide to another individual for a connection to be made. And he referred to these as bids for connection. And that because we are unaware of or oblivious to all the bids for connection that are being made by our partner, loved one, spouse, we do not know that we are ignoring, rejecting, and accepting them. So his goal through his Gottman Institute is to educate spouses and people, parents of this, so that you can consciously aware to choose to accept, ignore, or reject a bid for a connection. So if you're wanting to improve your relationship, then you need to be aware of when they are making a bid for connection, and you need to choose to accept it in a positive fashion. So I took that work that he did and I applied it to economics and physics and networking. And yeah, business is also in here as well. And when I plugged all of that in and turned it into this interdisciplinary, what I realized was there is a lot of battery and like a light bulb interaction happening that will either turn it into a positive or a negative interaction. And if you want a positive interaction with your partner, you need to be consciously aware of this physical energy that's being moved from potential over to kinetic. So I'm looking at this thing going, all right, I have a stored surplus of negative potential energy. I'm wanting to connect positively with my partner. So I used the kinetic energy, or I'm sorry, the potential negative energy, and I converted it over to a positive to make a bid for a connection. Fascinating. And when I did this, I wrote the letter, which was the kinetic energy, was the letter. So it's as if the potential energy is turned into kinetic energy via a bid for a connection. Now, he has the ability to receive, ignore, or reject, which now comes into authority and consent. This is a whole nother area. I'm not going to get into that because that's a rabbit hole. That's a whole nother thing. But that's like physics and psychology part 2. That's a whole nother thing happening. There's a lot more components. And that's really it, is breaking down all of these components. Because when you really break down the components and you start to see all the different components that revolve around the laws of physics, now you can become consciously aware. Bottom line, you now can consciously choose precisely how you want to implement them into your life so you can make the effort. The books are already written. The information is already there. I don't have to sit there and educate people on this. Go read physics. And when you learn in its basic physics, it is like Newton's laws. It's literally just Newton's laws and physics 101. You don't have to get into like metaphysics and you don't have to get into quantum mechanics. It's just the very basics. It's just classic physics. And it's extraordinary how it's all fitting. So I took the laws of physics and I started applying it to this concept. And wow, it changed everything. It's like, okay, there's my emotional energy. I am a sentient battery. All right, so there's the emotional energy. Oh, look at that. It's topping off and it's stored too much. And I know now that if I suppress any further, that it's going to turn into storage and a surplus, and it's going to explode. That'll create resistance. I know this now. So now I know for my mental health, I have to siphon this over into kinetic energy. Now I have a choice. I can create. I have an hypothesis that creation is really the only way to transfer this energy. Now, how you create is up to you. But this is where art comes in. This is where imagination is required. You can create a bid for a connection. You can use words. You can use art. You can write. You can invent. You can build. You can chop down trees. You can garden. And it's literally the action, the thing that has to be done. And that is momentum. Now, at first, it flowed immediately, and I was like, well, this is amazing. But then what I started to do afterward was, instead of storing it up and then transferring it, storing it up and transferring it, I went, wait a minute, what if I were to keep it going? This is where it gets really awesome. And I decided to start allowing it to flow naturally, so there was no disruption. Well, that's where I get my daily podcast and my daily articles that I write out. Now I'm looking at, what am I producing on a daily basis? And now it's starting to pick up momentum. Yesterday, I made the reference in one of my business meetings. I now have a pulsing heart. The healing garden now is a pulsing heart. It has a pulsing heart, metaphorically speaking, because I was able to take up that stored potential energy, turn it into kinetic energy, get something going so that there's momentum. Now I'm writing articles every day. I'm writing my book every day. Now I am doing podcasts every day. I'm doing business meetings every day. So now I see my productivity going up because I have momentum. So now you can link productivity of your business, productivity and results of your relationship, the results of your parenting, all now changing because you have plugged it into your potential energy from your emotional surge that now is fueling your potential energy, transferring it over into kinetic energy, which is now giving you momentum, which equals to productivity. And I'm going, wow. If one were to just take this concept and apply it to your mental health and healing, you see where I'm going with this? I'm going, well, there you go. It's just physics formulas. I started writing out the formulas and the logical proofs. I love math. So we also have logical health. So it's branched from there. I found out that we have optic physics inside of us. That's how we learn, is mirroring. Oh, this is one of my favorite things, is we're all mirrors, and our learning skills are 100% based off of the laws of reflection and the laws of deflection. Absolutely. So when I started to apply the laws of reflection and treating my children, treating everything around me as if it were a mirror, oh, suddenly I'm going, wow, it's exactly like you have a role model and you have a mirror. So that if you want the mirror to do X, well, you need to set an example so that the mirror will repeat X. And sure enough, there's another bid for connection. So here I am setting the example. And sure enough, as I set the example, I am now using my potential energy directed specifically toward an exact strategic plan of, I want X response from somebody. So I'm going to set the example, do, and then project. This is projection. And they, sure enough, have their mirroring. So they pick it up, they absorb it, and they mirror it back. Now I'm getting this beautiful fuel, and now we have a bid for a connection. Take it, turn it over to batteries again, and now we have this flow of energy back and forth. Now we have a connection. That's how human connection comes in. And if you look at, again, the barter trade system with economics, it's a beautiful flow exchange. And I'm going, all right, so now I understand how to connect with a human being. It's literally like connecting your energy through giving and receiving, gratitude and invitation to exchange again, all through the laws of authority and consent, which all reflects on that laws of reflection through mirroring. So when you apply the laws of optic physics with battery magnetic electrical energy, oh, you got this beautiful thing happening. Now, for every reaction, there is an equal and opposite reaction. You're traumatized. We take in that trauma and we hold on to it. Where is the equal and opposite reaction? Instead, we create, due to holding on to our trauma, this stored up surplus of potential energy, negative in most cases, until we explode. Which is why I'm going to go real graphic. Well, I'm not going to go graphic. I'm going to go real extreme here. We see crimes of passion. We see murder. We see abuse happening. We see a quiet person suddenly snapping. Suddenly it makes a lot of sense why crime happens. It's because a lot of people, it's always the quiet ones is what they say. It's because the quiet ones are the ones who are taking in the surplus, storing it all down, building up that potential energy until they can't stand it anymore and then they break. Or, unfortunately, in some cases, they commit suicide. And it's because they have this buildup of potential energy that they are not transferring over to kinetic energy. Therefore, stored potential energy can kill. There. Like really, this thing is impactful. Comprehending to the extreme danger of stored potential energy. Because that equal and opposite reaction must happen. Physics says so. And it's either going to come out in one of three ways. Well, four ways. It's going to come out violently and all at once. It's going to come out slowly and strategically in a healthy fashion. It's going to implode with suicide, or it's going to siphon artistically in other fashions. We have to transfer it into kinetic energy. And how we transfer this into kinetic energy, how we choose to use our surplus of stored potential energy, or we can just not store it and we can actually put it right back into use again so that there's a flow. So a battery works one of two ways. Either it's a storage unit or it's in a transformer. It's in a network. And a lot of people are storing up potential energy and they don't know what to do with it. They go to therapy. They're trying to figure out coping mechanisms and they just don't understand. And understanding how potential energy and kinetic energy are very much related to our psyche and our minds. Now we throw in logic. Now you go over to logic. And this is like a whole nother, this is another component that plays into all of this. I have my identity. It was very much I want, I love, and it has to be ethical. And then I have the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is very much the logic law of it has to be ethical and I believe. So you have your beliefs and you have your ethics, which might make up your logical health, your proof, so to speak, your theorem. And then you have what you want, what you love, and what is ethical. So you have your identity and your subconscious mind working completely together. And you want ice cream, but you believe the ice cream is going to cause you to gain weight, but you want it. Logical health steps in and says, is it ethical? Well, if you ethically believe in the preservation of health in your body, you might feel guilty if you were to eat the ice cream. So you don't. Now, your identity is going, yeah, but I want. And your beliefs say, no, because that's not going to be good for you. Now you have cognitive dissonance. Now you have conflict between your subconscious mind, your logical health, and your identity. When these two people inside of you are not matched up, you have two options. Either they need to come to an agreement where they're both going to be happy, or you need to find some sort of an alignment so that they take turns. From somebody who had multiple personality disorder, this is vital. Alignment and the union must be aligned. If you have a divided union amongst yourself, you are not going to feel good. You are going to have cognitive dissonance because now you have two conflicting frequencies inside of you. I just wrote an article this morning about self-doubt, and this is like faith in your own autonomy is at the core of all cognitive dissonance. It is the moment that we doubt ourselves. It is at the moment when we doubt our own ability to really make our own logical conclusions. Faith is not spirituality. Faith is not religion. Faith is trust. And trust is logical truth. But for somebody who is uneducated, who is unaware of physics, and who has no logical skills, they would assume that trust would be faith, which would be belief without proof, because we were taught that faith and proof cannot coexist, when in point of fact, faith and proof in logic are absolutely 100% symbiotic. Faith is belief or trust in your logical skills, whereas proof is the overall summation of your logical conclusion, which is why we call it a proof. And whenever we conclude with a logical proof in mathematics, the first question we ask ourselves is, how good is your logic? How well can you logicize? How well is your reasoning? You have to have solid faith that your logic skills are sufficient. That's why we have checks and balances in logic, is when you sit down with your checks and your balances, you can now measure how good your logic skills are to get the proof that you require to have a logical conclusion. But it's all about your ability to have faith in your own logic skills. Now, coming back over to autonomy, your ability to make a logical deduction without the interference or support of another. Autonomy. Now, a lot of people do not have any kind of faith in their logic. They do not depend on, nor do they believe in their logical skills. So they constantly question their autonomy. Now you have self-doubt. And in every case of self-doubt, every case, now you're leading into a lack of proof of concept, and you are now leading into a lack of harmony. You have cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you have two frequencies, again, that contradict. And when you have two frequencies that contradict, you lack proof of concept. When you lack proof of concept, you have self-doubt because you doubt your autonomy, because you do not have faith, belief, or trust in your own logical skills. And as you build up, and that's it really, faith is a lack of proof of concept. You need proof to confirm your faith, your belief. Do you believe that you can be logical and have sound reasoning? And it's absolutely extraordinary when you look at the full body of a proof, that the two parts of it, you have the premise and the accumulating the mathematical premise, the if-then statements, followed by the ability to combine those if-then statements into a logical conclusion. And if your logic is not sound, and we do this all the time, we observe in our day-to-day life, we listen and we assess. We hear things, we see things, we smell things. And the very first thing we do is we doubt our own eyes, because our eyes, our ears, our smell, how we feel physically, and how we taste are the absolute tools required to accumulate data into premise so that we can assess our own environment. And yet, how many times do we say things like, I can't believe my own eyes? Or you see something with your own eyes and we dismiss it because we don't trust our own logic skills. Even though we see it with our own eyes, we do not trust our own logic skills. Logic is such a core heart to how we see, how we listen, how we observe. You can see things all day long. You can smell things. You can listen to them all day long. But if you are not able to make a logical conclusion based off of the data you are receiving, it's because you doubt your own autonomy. Well, now you are dependent upon other people to make the conclusion for you. This is the core of pre-abuse. This formula is what leads to abuse, because it is only the person who doubts their own autonomy that is open to receive abuse. If you never have self-doubt, you cannot be abused, because the abuser is a challenger for your self. That is what happens prior to the abuse. The abuser steps in. They assess your abilities, and they immediately say things and do things to contradict your own observation. But if you do not value your own skills and logic and your ability to make your own deductions, you are immediately going to default and value their assessment over yours. And we do this while we trust the wrong person. We need to be trusting our own logical skills and our own deduction, but we're not. It's quite extraordinary when you really, and then when you add that physics, the mathematical element into it, now you have your mirror health where we're learning off of mirrors. You have your battery health where we're sentient batteries and we're toggling and we're juggling this massive emotional energy. And then you have your logical health, which is the dictation for the governing factor for all of our physics. And it's truly it. You can have all of the physics, which is the management and the input of what we receive. But it is our logic that processes it. Bottom line, it's the physics that allows us to absorb the data and manage it. But it's our logic that allows us to process it through comprehension. And with our circadian rhythm and our link through intuition into physics, logic, math from the time we're 2 years old, where we're feeling the physics, we're feeling the energy, we're feeling that gut instinct that says, oh, I am linked into the world clock. I know when I feel bad energy. I know when someone has bad vibes. I can feel that. And there are some people who are solid on what they feel. They trust their intuition above all else. Best thing for you. Put your intuition above all else, because your intuition is 100% linked into the world clock. It can feel physics, it can feel math, and it can feel logic before anything else. And then from there, build on your logical health. Your logical health is absolutely going to allow you to process the data, because the more you can process the data, the more you can call a duck a duck. The more you can see some data that comes in and you can say, oh, I see the situation for what it really is because I know my logic is sound. When you have faith in autonomy, when you have solid conviction for your own autonomy, there is no abuse that could ever happen to you that you cannot undo through your own reasoning. It's that potent. It's that strong. And it is the core of all abuse. You fix that, and you fix all your trauma. You fix all your mental health, all through the recovery of your own autonomy. But not just the autonomy, you've got to be solid with it. You cannot sway at all from your autonomy. A divided union cannot stand. And the self is made up of 6 mental parts. You are a union. And either your 6 parts of your mental system are unionized or they are divided. And because every action has an equal and opposite reaction, the more you are divided, the more you are going to have mental illness. Bottom line. So if you are in emotional peril, if you are feeling absolute disruption and turmoil, it is literally proportionate in ratio to how divided you are or aren't. The more together, the more solid you are on your own conviction, the absolute more health, more peace that you're going to have. And it is truly in ratio. Now, the 6 parts of your mental system is your identity, is your, I like to call it subconscious mind, but that is really not the right word for him. I've been calling him authority. I got to figure out what to call him. And then you have intuition. Technically, the subconscious mind is the logical health. It's the logical health. You have your identity, your logical health, your intuition, your ego, which is your conscious awareness. You have your defense system or your security system. And then you have your fear system. Your fear system should not be activated at all because your logical health replaces that. Your logical health is primary and your fear system is secondary if it does not work. Your defense system is part of your identity. Your identity is what you want. And if you don't get what you want, it converts over into potential energy, either positive or negative, and that potential energy is your security system, designed to keep you safe, that it has to transfer over into kinetic energy. So your defense system, one could say, is pretty much your storage for potential energy. While as your identity is the thing, your identity and your logical health are the things that produce. They are where your energy is made. So they are the production. Literally your identity, and I would say also your intuition, your identity, your logical health are absolutely your production of your own internal energy power source. And then intuition is reading the rest of the clock. And it's synchronizing with, okay, this is where you are with your emotional energy, but this is where the rest of the world is with its emotional energy. And you are mathematically synced up. And then when things happen to you or you don't get what you need through your identity, it then transfers over into potential energy through your security and defense system. And then what you choose to do with it there is going to depend on your mental health. Again, with your cognitive dissonance, it has to be converted over into kinetic energy. And if your defense system is down, if you never learned logical health, if you have low logical health, your fear system is going to be activated. And that is going to produce, that becomes another energy producer and not a good one. The fear system produces negative energy, whereas the subconscious mind produces neutral energy. Your belief system, if your belief system is negative, will produce negative. Your logical health, I say neutral, but actually it's all 3 of them. If you have a negative belief system, it's going to produce negative. If you have a positive, it's going to produce positive. And if you have neutral, so the belief system is contingent upon what kind of energy. And you can control your belief system. Your fear system is negative no matter what. So if you change your belief system from a negative over to positive or neutral, that'll link up to your logical health so that your logical health will produce positive or neutral charge. And then your identity is always going to produce positive charge. Always, always, always. She's always going to produce positive charge. So then your logical energy, your logical health with your, let's say, positive or neutral belief system linked up with your identity's positive is going to produce a surplus of positive or neutral energy. So long as your fear system is down, because the fear system produces negative energy. And then your intuition is reading the rest of the clock and the rest of the energy. And then you have the ability to transfer that over into kinetic energy, getting positive results. If you have a surplus of negative, you need to find a way to turn that over to transfer it into a positive experience. So you're taking negative and turning it into positive. Now, to do that, again, we're back to creation. You have to create something. or you have to destroy. Oh, that's why we either create or destroy. Negative destroys, like an explosion. Oh, you can self-destruct. You can explode, you can implode, or you can create. Oh, I need to process that. That's new data for me. Oh, give me a minute, please. Oh, oh. You can create or you can destroy. I see. You can create or you can destroy. I'm still processing this. I'm just like, oh my God. So I see the world in this big mathematical energy ball. And everyone's just doing this massive dumping of negative energy into destruction. We have self-implosion. We have explosion all over the place. But for every reaction, there is an opposite and equal reaction. So I believe that the world itself is accumulating all the surplus of negative energy. And we can and we will be turning it over into positive energy. Are you all right? Thank you. You okay? All right. And it's a swinging pendulum. Physics. So that a surplus of negative, first perspective, the gauge is filling up and it's going to hit a surplus. It's already there, a surplus of negative that's going to explode and it's going to swing over the other way. So it's going to then fill up with a surplus of positive. It has to, because physics says so, because for every reaction, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So we are currently filling up the vial with a lot of negative energy right now. And when it explodes, it's going to swing the other way, and we're going to see a vast amount of positive energy filling the world. And when that happens, it's going to explode again, but then you integrate. You realize the balance of both. So there's going to be a period that's just filled with horrible, negative misery. Sound familiar? And then when that finally reaches a surplus, we're going to swing the other way, because that is what pendulums do in physics. And we're going to fill up with a surplus of positive. And we're going to get so disgustingly sweet and nice to each other that we're going to value the balance of both. Neutral. I'm still trying to figure out what happens once we fill up the surplus of neutral. I see us choosing. You can do negative in a healthy, destructive way, where everyone is safe. Adventure. And then I see very much you have to have the balance of both. But yeah, I absolutely see this massive wave of positivity coming. That's why everyone's healing right now, is because they filled up. It's slow at first. 2019 is when it started. 2019, there was an explosion of suddenly people going, I'm going to go heal. Compliments of COVID. And it was a massive wave of surge, huge surge. Coaching industry exploded. Mental health healing exploded, like massive amounts of people. It's going to happen again, where there's going to be a, holy shit, is it going to pick up momentum? It ignited in 2019, but the healing surge is going to absolutely explode very, very soon. I predict this year. I predict this year we're going to see a massive explosion of healing in 2024. And that's going to quadruple the healing. It's going to just ignite it because the spark is there. The spark happened in 2019. We're going to see another surge, massive surge of healing. And that's going to ignite a third wave. And the third wave is going to be the one that really pushes us to world peace. It is going to be so magnificent because when you look at how electricity and power works, and every one of us is our own little itty bitty battery that's generating power. And right now, there's a lot of people, all the people who are healing are generating positive power. And right now we have maybe 2% that's generating power and it's building. And we are contributing to this massive power surge and it's building. And when that explodes, because we are mirrors, it's going to take off even more. Mob mentality, if you take the law of reflection and every human is a mirror, mob mentality is shining a laser into a hall of mirrors. There are 8 billion mirrors on this planet. And somebody shined a laser into that and it bounced and it's negative. So there's this negative laser that's just bouncing off of 8 billion people. And for every reaction, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. A positive surge is coming. And just like all those mirrors, another light, another green laser is going to be blasted through those 8 billion mirrors and it's going to bounce. It's going to ignite. Mob mentality through positive healing. How's that sound? It's coming. Physics says so. It's extraordinary. All the signs point to yes. It's extraordinary to see. And there's a lot of people pocketed all over the world. I've been in contact with so many of them. It's what I do during the day as I talk and I'm like, what's going on? And people don't know it yet. They don't see it. But there's a lot of people all over the world, like a network of little power sources. And each one of them is like a lightning rod. And I'm connecting them into the healing garden to spread. And it's literally like hooking up into this massive network of healing positive energy so that it just goes out and spreads because it's coming. And it's forming this gorgeous healing network. And like I said, 2024, we're going to see it. And it's going to happen again. And that last surge is going to be vast. And it's absolutely beautiful. It's extraordinary. And once we become consciously aware of this, oh, it's going to go fast because people want it. And every single one of us has one commonality. We all love our children. Absolutely every one of us loves our children. No matter who or where or what you are, you love your child. And the concept of saving the children, healing, just so we can save the children. We all know that our parents fucked up. We all know that we don't know how to parent. We all know. And we're all going, okay, clearly we're all wrong. What's the right way? And I'm just sitting here going, physics. Physics is the right way because look at the math. Physics is the right way. And when you start to apply this, when you start to apply the laws of physics, when you start to apply optic physics with mirrors, when you start to apply emotional energy and how they interact, when you start to understand the emotional energy that is produced from self-authority, it's a whole nother creature. It really, truly is. When you apply logical health, math is going to save the world. It truly is. And it's this beautiful, beautiful web that's just spreading. And it's like an infectious cure. It's like a viral cure. That's really what I see it as, is a highly infectious viral cure that's just sitting here and it's ready. And it's just, it's at a point, and it's evolution at its finest. And it's just like, all right, let's see how this is going to go. And you can see it if you read the math, if you look at the physics, if you know the astronomy, if you look at human behavior, I see rows of scientists, physicists, psychologists, philosophers, mathematicians, chemists, biologists, doctors, and we're all looking. And every single one of them is going, the answer is X. And X is This infectious viral cure is about to be unleashed. And it's gonna happen because evolution says so. And the Fibonacci sequence is adding it all up. And spiral dynamics is there. And the 12 ethical stages of perspective growth are just waiting in line. And physics is going, oh, yes, it's happening very, very soon. We're just literally blowing it up. And it's just sitting back and watching it happen. And it is the best view in the house, is to just sit back and watch this thing ignite. It's already ignited. 2019, it ignited. And now it's just building up, and that fire is about to unleash. And I'm just like, yes, I'm so excited to see this happen. And it's just, it's going to be a beautiful few years. Absolutely beautiful. But the worse it gets is it getting a little closer to this thing taking off, because that is how human beings have to learn. That is exactly how we have to learn. Indulgence, avoidance, integration. That's how we learn. And right now we are in the indulgence of misery until we have enough. And then it switches over to something different because we're sick of it. And it's just, that's all we're doing. We're all just filling up this vial of misery until we all reach the point of I've had enough. And it's going to start with a whole lot of people who already did it and said in 2015, I've had enough. They've called uncle. And in 2024, there's going to be a whole lot more people going, I've had enough. And there's going to be year X where people again say, the rest of them say, I've had enough. Oh, and look, that's working. And that's really what's happening, is this infectious viral cure is starting to take hold. And I'm so, so excited for it. I'm just sitting here watching it all. And it's just so beautiful. It's beautiful. And the best part of all of this is because it's logical, mathematical, physical, and precise according to the laws of physics, it's no longer an unknown. It's predictable math, which means it eliminates the fear of the unknown. That's the best part, is the fear of the unknown is eliminated with this. So suddenly we are no longer at the mercy of a black, unpredictable future. We've been here before. The Greeks actually had a name for this. And it's just, they called it the Golden Age. And it is a time when humans reached this point, and it literally was world peace. It's not a fiction. It's just, it takes so long between each gaps of world peace that it's these periods that occur, so that in the small scheme of things, we think it's never happened. But in the big thing of things, it's happened many times before. And we are just coming up to the next wave of world peace. And it's just this beautiful point of there's no more unknown. Predictable mathematics takes that element out. It's just so beautiful. I don't really have anything more to say today, but I don't want to shut this down and go away just yet. Maybe we'll just meditate. Manifestation is extraordinary. I love talking about manifestation. Manifestation is mathematics. It's when you have your cognitive core, and you have your identity, and you have your ethics, and then you have your beliefs. You have your intuition, which is the end result. Your intuition is that mathematical clock. It's your circadian rhythm. So it's your tuning into the world around you. And when you're so tuned into your circadian rhythm through your intuition, your gut instinct, that basically is the thing inside of you that reads the math around you to tell you this is where you're going to go. This is when you need to do it. The intuition is the what to do and when. That is what your intuition is. Your identity is what you want and what you dream and what you desire, but it has to be ethical, so says the identity. So you have your ethics guiding you, because whatever you want, it has to be ethical. has to be good. Your ethics are 100% contingent upon Mother Nature and your current state of evolution, where you are in the 12 ethical perspective stages of growth. That is what determines your ethics. The 12 ethical stages of perspective growth. This is science. And we evolved according to these 12 ethical stages. So where you are determines what your ethics are going to be, and they are predictable. They are absolutely aligned. Everyone goes through them. It is literally a linear mathematical equation of your emotions that have to be learned in a ladder learning stacked sense of what comes next. It's called an emotional pathway. And the emotional pathway leads to the learning and internalization of your ethics. This is where ethics comes from. So you have what you want. You evolve, you grow, you gain information, you develop along the ethical stages, which define your ethics. So you become more ethical the older you get, specifically the wiser or the more educated you get. The more educated you get, the more logical you get, the more ethical you become. So you have your identity, you have your ethics, your beliefs. That is where things get a little sticky because your beliefs can be altered by outside sources and they can be tampered with. Your beliefs can also come from poor logic, and they can come from, or they reflect a very, that's really it. That your beliefs are your law of reflection. That's where your beliefs come from. The law of reflection really interferes with your beliefs. So with manifestation, you have what you want and your emotional ethics. You need to eliminate and or bypass your beliefs. And then it's plugging into your intuition and literally allowing your intuition to guide you. While your intuition is guiding you, you also need to be using your emotional surplus of potential energy and transferring it over into action with kinetic energy. But you need to be doing that while it's aligned to your intuition. So it's your identity, your ethics, bypassing your beliefs. There's a little bit more there with the beliefs. And then transferring it through action over into the guidance of your intuition. And that is manifestation. Now, here's the thing. You have to be in the second ethical perspective stage of growth in order to pull this off, because only then are you open to receive. And if you are not open to receive, well, the universe can give you anything it wants and you're not going to receive it. So you have to be in the second ethical perspective stage of growth, open to receive vulnerability in order to accept whatever it is the universe wants to drop into your lap, which is going to drop whatever it is into your lap based off of your identity and your ethics if you listen to your intuition. But again, you have to be in that second perspective. The reason why manifestation does not work for most people is because they're closed. You are closed if you have trauma. You are closed if you are stuck in a comfort zone. And you are closed if you are stuck in a fear zone. So you have to heal to get into the second ethical perspective stage of growth, which is the open, vulnerable, learning growth stage. When you are open, then you can receive, and then your identity, your ethics, follow the intuition, transfer your potential energy into kinetic energy, open to receive. And that is the formula of manifestation. And what I really want right now is just world peace. Global healing. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. It's a short day today, but I covered a lot. Thank you so much for your audience, and may the kindest of words always find you.